Hello people of YouTube, my name is Brad, this is my channel Animate Orange, and this week in 3D metal model news. There is a lot to talk about with Fascinations this week with the newly released Star Wars models, but there's more than just Star Wars and Fascinations this week. But to start with, Fascinations earlier this week released the speeder bike that they had teased quite some back in their coming soon model list. It came out earlier this week. It's already out and available to purchase. Some people have already built it. There are some people that are really quick at building these models, which surprises even me. And the speeder bike is listed as a challenging model, which is no surprise to me because I imagine there are a lot of delicate parts in that model. I had once mentioned when I built the Infa's Nest bike that, hey, we got this bike, why can't we get the speeder bike? And now we finally have it. But the big news is we finally now, sometime during the night, Fascinations released, and we now know the identity of the 5 Episode 9 models that have come our way. They are already available on Innovatoys, at least until supplies last. I imagine they might sell out quickly, but I'm sure there are more to come. For starters, we have Zori's Ywing fighter, and I think that's the one I was most excited about. There were rumors that there was going to be a Ywing fighter. I talked about how Lego had released a Ywing fighter. Fascinations is releasing a Ywing, and that's very exciting, at least for me. I did do a little looking around. I did do some comparison pictures between this Ywing and older Ywings. I did notice that there are some differences, and I kind of expected that when the X-Wing, when Poe Dameron's X-Wing came out. There was an updated version. There were some changes in it. The Ywing seems to be the same. This Ywing, as well as several of the Star Wars models, has some color accents on it. It's not completely painted, but it's some accents to make it look better. I think it's fairly well done. The front engine is the biggest difference to me. The front of the engines no longer have the legs egg rounded shape. And yes, according to what I have heard, originally they were legs eggs, and that's why they have that shape. If you don't remember what those are, you should Google it. It's kind of an interesting little thing, silly thing. But the front of those engines are actually kind of open and kind of make a little more sense, at least for travel in an atmosphere. As far as space is concerned, alright, whatever. But that's a big difference. The body does seem to be a little bit shorter. There's like a shorter neck to it. The cockpit seems to be slightly different. There's like a section behind the cockpit that's more prominent in the older models. I will say though, according to a video I watched with Adam Savage, not all of the old Y-Wings were the same size and length. There were some differences in them, so I guess that's not that really big a deal. It is a Y-Wing. It looks awesome. It has a ton of tiny little detail on the back. The detail does seem to be different from the comparison shot of the one that I've got here. It's really that big a deal. And it does have a stand quite similar to the Iconics Imperial Star Destroyer that I just built, so it seems like they've built a theme there, which I think is pretty neat. The next one up is the Resistance Awing fighter. Also very excited about this. Very excited they have an A-Wing. I did do a comparison shot of that as well. At first they look very much similar. It doesn't look like a lot of changes. The new one has color accents like the Y-Wing, but in the comparison shot the newer one does look a little shorter and wider. I don't know, that might just be the angle at which it's taken. The newer one looks like it has larger, more detailed side guns, and as far as the engine, the back of it, either there's a missing panel on the new one or they've just kind of added more detail because the older one looks like it's kind of a smooth side, where this one you can kind of see some bits inside, a little bit like Land Speeder on one side has like a missing panel and you can see the inside of the engine. So I don't know if it's a missing panel or if it's supposed to be that way because I can only see the one side. There are no 360 views available yet. As it stands now, you just take into a page, it just shows the picture. There's no instructions, no 360 view. There's, as far as I can find, no other way to get to that information, so hopefully that will change in the near future. It also has a similar stand to the Y-Wing and the Iconics Star Destroyer. Next up is the Sith TIE Fighter. It's pretty obvious what's different about this. The side panels are triangular shaped, and it does have some red accent. I'm sure there's some other minor differences in it, but standing up front, or what just kind of stands out up front, is the side panels are different. So I shouldn't be too surprised if they've thrown another TIE Fighter. It seems like we get a new TIE Fighter every time. Kind of interesting, but there it is. The next one is the First Order Tread Speeder. So I guess a new speeder with treads on it. So either for sand or ice or snow. I don't know. It's another speeder. Looks fairly neat. It doesn't seem to have any color accent. As a completionist, I'm going to get it and build it. But there's not a whole lot to say about that one. And the last one is the DO Droid, which I expected this to be one of the models. This was one of the first things announced new in the Star Wars movie. It's a very Disney looking droid. It looks to be one of the simple ones. It does also have some green color accents, and it also looks like it has some dirt on it, some weathering on it. So it's kind of neat. Still on the fence about how I feel about this character. I think it really depends on how this character is going to act in the movie as to how I feel about it. Anyway, those are the 5 new models, plus the speeder. The old style speeder is now available, so a lot of new things now available from Fascinations. Speaking of Fascinations, I do want to point out, if you're going to the New York Comic Con, they have a booth there. They have been there, I think, for a couple of days now. They will continue to be there until the 6th, which is this Sunday. So if you find yourself going to the New York Comic Con, look for them at booth 1879. My understanding is that they're going to try and have some Episode 9 models there available. So hopefully they have some. If you're there, going there anyway, stop by and check it out. And there's also rumors, and don't quote me on this, that if you're looking for one of the Mega R2-D2s, that might be a good place to find it if you're going anyway. So check into that. I know that there are some people that really want to get that model, and it's not the easiest one to find. And I will also put up this quick map that CocoWiki was nice enough to put together to try and help you find their booth if that's what you're looking for. And I believe he's also made a post about it in his MetalEarthBuilder.com, so I'll put a link in the description down below so you can go check out his page if you want to get a picture or get an actual link on your computer of that picture rather than trying to pause this video. Now, stepping away from Fascinations, I did notice something earlier this week on Twitter. It was a picture from someone of a SpiderMan Universal Studios apparently exclusive model. It's a very different, more rounded SpiderMan character. It's very much Tenyo line. If you're familiar, we don't talk about Tenyo very much because if you're not in Japan, they're rather difficult to get a hold of, at least here in the United States. But they do have some iconic, not iconics, but Legends type models, but they're more rounded than the squarish ones that we have, and this SpiderMan seems to be of that style. Now, there's not much information to be gotten from this Twitter page. They do have a picture of the completed model and of the packaging. It definitely looks to be Tenyo packaging. It does say both on the base and on the packaging that it is a Universal Studios Japan model. This has happened before where stuff showed up in Universal Studios Japan and ultimately it did come to the United States, and we were able to get it here in Universal Studios here in the States. So kind of hoping that that happens. However, still unfortunately the Universal Studios stuff is a lot more expensive. But I'll be keeping an eye out for that, and I definitely wanted to share that with those of you out there that are big exclusive fans. Beyond that, looking around on the web, I don't see anything new from Peace Cool or MU. I did find on AliExpress a couple of new models from Microworld, and again, I'll put links in the description down below. I found them in 2 different stores. I found them in the Magical Model Store and the New York Model Store. I'll have links to both of those stores, but we have a Flying Tiger model. Very colorful model, a lot of blue, red, and silver and gold in there. Looks to be, according to the information that I've gathered, it's made of brass, stainless steel, and iron is what the sheets are made of. It looks like a completed dimension of 20 by 18 by 14.5 centimeters. The information says that there's 7 sheets of metal, of pieces, though I only see 5 in the picture, so I don't know if that's just they're not showing off of 7 or if that's a mistake. And that's a listing in both stores. They both have it this way, although one store listed it having 395 pieces, the other does not. It's about $55 US from the different stores. It looks to be a really colorful, amazing model, and he's kind of perched on, looks like a stone thing as well. Very colorful. I'd very much like to build that one of these days. The other model is just simply called an Energy Base building, and it's supposedly an original model. Very colorful as well. Reds and silvers and blues and golds. I think there's gold. It's kind of hard to tell. The materials, according to the one store, was stainless iron. So this could possibly be weird translations. This one has, I think it's a completed dimensions of 12 by 11 by 6.5 centimeters, 3 sheets, 130 pieces. It has a 2-star difficulty, which doesn't sound very hard. I don't know 2 out of how many stars. I don't know what the total amount of stars is, but 2 doesn't sound too bad. And it's about 17 or 18 US dollars. I also should go back and point out that the Flying Tiger model is a 10-star model, so that looks to be a much more difficult model. So far, those are the only 2 stores I found them in. Nothing on Crazy Toys or either their website or their AliExpress store. But those are 2 models outside of the big Star Wars envelope that's going on that I definitely wanted to share with you today. That brings us to this week's question of the week. This week's question is, have you ever had a model that just frustrated you to the point that you either completely abandoned it, smashed it, or tore it up? What was that model, and what caused you to get to that point? Feel free to answer that question down in the comments down below, and I will share your responses in next week's video. And I'll also share an experience that I had where I just basically lost my cool. And that brings us to the end of this week's video. It is the beginning of another month, and I do want to take a moment, as always, to thank my Patreon supporters for supporting this channel. I want to thank Andrew S., Chris Paskowich, Giovanni Falardo, Hugh Morrison, Kaj Nielsen, Kamal McCoon, Ken Crowan, Kendall Fargo, and Man Hong. Thank you very much for continuing to support this channel so I can continue to bring the build videos, the review videos, and the news videos that I bring. Speaking of Patreon support, if you're interested in supporting, want to help this channel out, there is links in the description down below at the end of this video. There's also a link for Ko-Fi. If you just want to give a tip on a particular video, feel free to do that as well. I have started a series of behind-the-scenes videos on my Patreon. So if you're our Patreon supporter, you can see this series of videos and see kind of what goes on behind the scenes. I'm working on a series of videos of what goes on, to how I put these videos together, the steps that I use. If that's something of interest to you, become a Patreon supporter and you will have access to that as well. I'll leave it at that. As always, thank you for watching. We'll see you next week, and keep on keeping on.